The United States and Singapore have a close cooperative relationship, which appears to be mutually beneficial on many levels. According to neorealism theory, though, no two states have identical interests. At what points would neorealism predict that the interests of Singapore and the United States would diverge? And are these predictions borne out in actual foreign policy events? The answers to these questions have interesting foreign policy implications for both countries. Singapore is especially beneficial to the United States in the current conflicts the United States has with Islamic fundamentalist terrorist organizations. Singapore has been invaluable to the United States in providing a navy base close to the Middle East, yet safe from conflict and terrorism, a safe and convenient refueling stop for nuclear ships and submarines, a friendly ally in Southeast Asia, and an invaluable source of counterterrorism information. Singapore has been called one of the United States' most useful allies in counterintelligence, as Singapore's friendly moderate Muslim community passes information along to the Singaporean government. In addition, Singaporean bankers have been uniquely successful in tracking the flow of money through the Middle and Far East, and in the process obtaining valuable counterterrorism information as well. In return, the United States presence provides some military protection to Singapore, and the United States has invested heavily in the economy of Singapore. Singapore is a major trading partner of the United States in the Southeast Asia area. The United States and Singapore signed a free trade agreement on May 6, 2003, which became effective January 1, 2004. Since 2004, exports from the United States have increased over 73%, with steady growth in exports of medical devices, machinery, and construction equipment. Trade is still the other way as well, with considerable United States investment in plants and businesses in Singapore. So closely tied are the two economies at this point that Singaporean officials themselves state that a 1% drop in the United States economy has a 1.4% effect on Singapore's gross national product. As the United States economy grows, so does the economy of Singapore. Thus, the United States benefits from its relationship with Singapore in that the United States' position as a giant power is bolstered. Valuable information and convenient assistance to the United States military are provided, and Singapore benefits in that its risk of being taken over by other giant powers, in particular its large neighbor China, is reduced by the American military presence. In addition, the economic benefits Singapore receives from the United States can be seen as relative gain, an additional consideration given by one state to another to bolster an alliance. Neorealist theory would predict two major potential downfalls of this cooperative relationship. One has to do with the relative size of the two countries. Singapore has a population comparable to a large city in the United States. The United States is huge in landmass and population, and is the dominant great power in the world today. Small states benefit from banding together with other small states to approximate counterbalancing great power to the great power states. This is, however, of no benefit to the great power states. It would thus be predicted that Singapore would band together with other small South Asian countries, and that the United States would work against this collaboration. This prediction is borne out by events. Singapore is allied with ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. During the 1997 East Asian economic crisis, the other nations within ASEAN protested the policies of the International Monetary Fund, claiming that loans unduly favored the United States and Europe. The United States effectively blocked changes in the IMF's lending policies and put pressure on Singapore to retain free trade with the United States. Singapore did retain free trade, unlike several other Southeast Asia countries, but also backed ASEAN's position. The government of Singapore continues to see benefit in maintaining strong ties both to ASEAN and to the United States, and surrendering its independence to neither. The other likely disruption to the cooperation between the two nation-states would be predicted to relate to their different internal configurations. Neorealist theory holds that states must attend to internal threats to maintain the stability of the state as well as external threats. Singapore and the United States experience very different internal pressures. Less than 0.5% of the United States population is Muslim, and in the United States, Islamic terrorism is largely perceived as a threat from outside. For a politician in the United States, appearing to be even barely tolerant of Islam, let alone truly cooperative with Muslim groups, can be unpopular. Close to 80% of the United States population identifies as Christian, and less than 0.5% as Muslim. Yet in Singapore, no one religious group is dominant. Islam is the second largest religious group, making up nearly 15% of the population. The Singaporean government cannot afford to alienate 15% of the population. The government of Singapore is keenly aware of the role dissatisfied Islamic fundamentalists played in overturning the previous government of Indonesia, a neighboring Southeast Asia state and fellow member of ASEAN. Thus, counterterrorism efforts in Singapore have relied heavily on courting moderate Muslim organizations asking for citizen participation in monitoring terrorist threats and portraying Singaporean Muslims as key allies in the battle against terrorism. This has actually been a more effective policy than the United States policy, especially in former President Bush's day, of harsh rhetoric that was often considered at least by other countries to be anti-Islam. Neorealist theory would lead us to predict that Singapore would respond negatively to such rhetoric, and that any movement on the part of the United States to soften such rhetoric would reduce internal pressures for Singapore and would therefore be welcomed. Such a softening would make it safer to continue to ally with the United States, obtaining valuable external protection without risking internal dissent and possible instability. This prediction is borne out also by events. In early 2008, at the low point of President Bush's popularity worldwide, Singapore withdrew its military forces from Iraq, where they had been fighting alongside the United States. This was largely symbolic, as Singapore's military is very small, but it represented a withdrawal of support from the United States. More recently, the reaction to President Obama's recent Nobel Peace Prize differed in Singapore from within the United States. Within the United States, public reaction was skeptical for the most part, with many commentators pointing out that the external threat of war had not been reduced by anything the new president had yet done. However, Singapore's influential first Prime Minister, Minister Mentor Lee Kuan Yew, recently visited President Obama in Washington and referred both to the renewal and change in the United States and peaceful transition worldwide, for which he warmly credited President Obama.
Hello, everybody. I just want to welcome the Minister Mentor of Singapore. This is one of the legendary figures of Asia in the 20th and 21st centuries. He is somebody who helped to trigger the Asian economic miracle. Singapore has been an outstanding friend and ally of the United States for many, many years. And so I am very much looking forward to the opportunity to hearing from the Minister Mentor his views on the evolving situation in Asia as I prepare for my upcoming trip both to Singapore and to other key nations in the region. And so I'm very grateful that he took the time. Welcome. And on behalf of the American people, we want to say thank you to the people of Singapore for being such outstanding friends.
Thank you, Mr. President, for those very warm words. I'm especially privileged to see you at a time of renewal and change in America, and during a period of transition where the world order is changing. And I look forward to hear your views on how you see the world evolving and America's role in it, which is crucial to the stability and prosperity of East Asia.
Thank you very much.
President Obama is widely perceived worldwide as less negative towards the Islam than his predecessor. Simply softening the prior perception of the United States as anti-Islam does indeed place Singapore in less danger, and therefore, from Singapore's point of view, the prize is not undeserved. The internal threat of civil war and the resulting barrier to an alliance with the United States has already been reduced for Singapore. Thus, neorealism provides a structure which allows for the interpretation and even prediction of the differing responses of Singapore and the United States to world events. No alliance is perfect, as the interests of nation-states never completely coincide. An analysis of the differing internal dynamics in particular would benefit both governments as they work towards a stable and long-term counterterrorism alliance. Singapore will not easily be able to ally with a great power, however, essential to its external security, which threatens its internal security by a real perceived anti-Muslim bias. In turn, the United States will only be able to tolerate Singapore's ties to Asian and to other great powers such as China and Russia, as long as the government of the United States continues to believe that the government of Singapore is loyal to the United States first among allies. The delicate dance of states attempting to ally is interesting and complex. It is also essential if states are to be able to combat threats to peace which cross state lines, such as worldwide terrorism.